everybody. Welcome back aboard the great ship, the Space Show. I am your host, Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Frost, joined as always by Admiral Kerry Jackson. Commander Robert Neal is having some technical issues, and then Chip Gowron, PI, has joined us today.
Glory to you and your mysteries.
And your house.
It's my favorite part.
Today, listen, I'm going to try so hard to be positive, but these episodes that we watch have me so pissed off.
Really?
We are going to talk about the Drumhead, Half a Life, the host, the Mind's Eye, and In Theory.
This is what I like about this show, is I'll watch an episode of Star Trek and I'll think, I think Rebecca will think this about that.
Yeah.
Completely wrong. I'm just not even going to try. Not even going to try to formulate an opinion of what Rebecca will think.
I like to keep you on your toes.
There's a couple gems in here, though.
I think so.
Are there? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll
in
give
my
it a go.
humble, befuddled opinion, there's some gems in here.
Also, today, when we are recording, it's May 23rd, 2024. Happy 30th anniversary to the series finale of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh, I did not know that.
May 23rd, 1994. Final episode airs.
And a mere 6 years later, my youngest was born.
I was going to say, isn't today
2000.
your child's birthday?
Yep. My youngest is 24 today.
Oh, wow.
And stayed up watching Star Trek The Next Generation with me last night.
How nice.
Aww.
And not a Luxana Troy episode to be... Well, there was one, but we watched that the other night because Molly usually crashes to watch their queen slay.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get to it. So jumping right into the Drumhead, a retired admiral boards the Enterprise in an effort to determine the actions aboard the ship surrounding an act of sabotage and possible treason. I love a courtrume episode.
That's why I was like, Rebecca's going to love this.
Yeah.
There's intrigue, there's mystery, there's,
Maybe
subterfuge.
Because it is not a real trial, not a real courtroom. It's a Drumhead. So a Klingon traitor is aboard the Enterprise. He's arrested, Lieutenant Jadan, and he's a Klingon exobiologist on board who is part of an exchange program with the Klingons. I love that they're always doing exchange programs with the Klingons.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he passed on secrets to the Romulans via fluid in a medical syringe, and the syringe had an optical reader to convert digital information into coded data on amino acids.
Very clever.
The future of subterfuge is insane. These amino acids could be injected into anyone who could become the courier of top secret information. A sabotage of the warp drive is feared. And with as often as we're having issues with the warp drive, you would think they would keep that thing under tighter lock and key or something, because there is always something going on with the warp drive.
It really should be a secure area in the ship, but it seems like anybody can walk in the engine room.
Yeah,
And they just let anybody in there.
it's like Luxana Troy could walk in at any time and have a picnic right there on your engineering console.
I mean, even back in the...
Troy just walking onto the bridge, beep, boop, 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 totally safe, totally fine.
Different
think
episode.
about it. Even back in the original series, people just waltzing into the engine room. This should be a secure area. There should be 2 red shirts outside of the doors, Anyway,
Commander Robert Neal, can you hear me now?
apparently not.
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, huzzah. So Jadan was noted as using a computer terminal to access the warp drive controls, and then shortly after there was an explosion in the warp drive itself. And fortunately, the ship survived. But it sounds like Jadan passed on the engine schematics to a Romulan. What is it with all of these Klingons secretly working with Romulans?
Original series.
Yeah.
They were trading technology. The bird of prey was identical for both militaries.
The Romulans and the Klingons.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Jadan tries to bribe Worf with redemption on Klingon if he helps him, but Worf, ever honorable, says absolutely not. So, in the meantime, we've got a retired female Federation admiral, Sati, and her former assistants, arrive.
Gene Smart. Gene
Simmons.
Smart.
Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons.
Oscar
Could you
winner.
imagine
Gene
if it was Gene
Oh,
Smart?
I'd love it if it was Gene Smart, but Oscar winner
Max?
Gene Simmons.
Maxwell Smart. Sorry.
So she's there to take charge of the investigation on the sabotage of the warp drive. Meanwhile, Data and the Forge look into the risk that the warp engine was deliberately sabotaged. The video footage doesn't reveal anything. The engine was working under normal parameters till about 52 milliseconds prior to the explosion. Sati was the one who uncovered the alien conspiracy to take over Starfleet Command 3 years ago, so they brought her out of retirement to do this. Picard talks to her about the possibility of Klingons and Romulans aligning against the Federation. Jadan accepts he acknowledges that he is a spy on behalf of the Romulans, but he denies sabotaging the vital dilithium chamber and implies that there's another traitor on board. So we start grilling the crew, and then we meet our new friend, Simon Tarsus, who gave Jadan the injections. I spoiled the rest of the episode for myself here because Simon talks about how his paternal grandfather was Vulcan, and that's why he looks the way he does.
Yeah.
So but before he said that, I Googled him to find out what his deal was, and it said,
"What's with the ears, buddy?"
I was like, hey, what's with your ears? And the internet says, oh, he's Romulan, actually. And so from there, the rest of the episode was spoiled for me. So note to self, don't Google things about the episode until the episode is done.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that Simon is lying because he looks like a liar. He's tricked into lies by acting guilty.
And plus, he looks enough like Seth MacFarlane that you just don't trust him.
Well, hold on. If I was in a room with Seth MacFarlane, limitless trust coming from this guy.
From me, too. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just kidding. He's a peach.
50-50.
It's understandable, though. Sabin, one of the delegates there with Gene Smart, imposter, is convinced that they have found the man who has sabotaged the engines, though the sabotage of the engine turned out to be an accidental failure. Listen, all y'all, it's deemed not to be sabotage.
It was just an accident.
Just an act, which again raises even more questions about how we are treating the equipment of the warp drive.
Exactly.
Because if it was a failure of the system itself and the metal pieces itself, what are we doing? I think we need to build better product. Is this Boeing? Is Boeing making warp drive doors?
Warp core sabotage never happened on Michael Burnham's ship, and her warp drive's made of mushrooms.
That's right. You'll find out.
Through all of this, Simon confesses that he lied about his ancestry to hide a Romulan grandfather because he wanted to be aboard a starship. And so he lied on his Starfleet forums, and it's going to haunt him ever since. And you can tell he actually does feel bad about it. And meanwhile, Picard objects to Sati against the unethical procedure by trying to hold Tarsus guilty without evidence. He speaks to her and says, listen, you're going about this all wrong. You're being a little intense. And she, like all admirals before her, says, I'm not being intense. You're being lazy. And
you mean someone in a high up position will not admit they're wrong? Oh,
and my daddy this, my daddy that. My daddy had big old balls and big old spurs, and everywhere he went, everybody would boost.
She calls upon the Starfleet Chief of Security, Admiral Henry, to look for an even wider conspiracy, starting with Picard himself.
Yeah, he was Locutus.
She brings up all of his dirty history.
Yeah.
He's on trial. He's brought to the stand, and she is like, how long have you been captain of the Enterprise? And he's like 3-ish years or whatever. And she says, cool. Are you aware you've broken the Prime Directive like at least 9 times?
Shit, Kirk broke Prime Directive 9 times in an afternoon.
I eat breaking rules for breakfast. And so he's brought to the stand. He argues against the trial conducted against Simon based on the insinuation and innuendo. He says that Simon is being on account of his family's Romulan lineage, which has got nothing to do with his actions in the present. Picard appeals to Chief Security Officer Admiral Henry not to condemn Simon on account of his bloodline. Sati accuses Picard of violating the Prime Directive 9 times, and he is questioned further about the T'Pel incident. T'Pel was a secret Romulan spy, and Picard was ordered to deliver her to the Romulans. And Sati says when the deception was revealed, Picard took no action to retrieve her.
Well, yeah.
There were bigger ships.
Because there were bigger ships, and there would have been bad shit going on if
And
you'd
I,
have done
think, and I think we all know by now the Romulans have some pretty good tech. Why would you want to go up against that?
2 birds of prey? No, not
2 birds of prey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worf interjects that the Enterprise, it was in danger, so Picard did everything that he could. And then Satine then questions Worf as his own father was a Romulan collaborator, so how can we trust anything he says? And also, Picard, didn't you just become a Borg?
Could you imagine what this episode would have been, though? Like if Worf had just disemboweled her right there.
Yeah.
Call my honor into question.
Picard continues to repel Sati logically, and she has an emotional outburst saying that she has brought down bigger men than him.
But you don't get in a courtroom verbal joust with Picard, I'm telling you.
No. Everyone in the hearing room realizes that for Sati, this is about satisfying her own ego and not about finding the truth.
Exactly.
So Admiral Henry calls an end to the hearings and Sati leaves the Enterprise. That shot, Jonathan Frakes directed this episode, and he did a fantastic job. I always think he does a fantastic job.
Yes.
But there's the shot of everybody leaving that room and leaving her in there by herself. Ooh, that was brutal.
You even see the ghost of her dad leave the room.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, come on. He turned it into a few good Starfleet officers. And it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You want the truth? You couldn't handle the truth.
Can't handle the truth. I'd love to see Picard do that. You can't handle the truth.
I
Instead, he'd just be like, whoa.
I really liked this episode.
I really did too, yeah. It was a little too, rewatching it now, it was a little too close to home.
This is how you turn people against each other.
Exactly.
You take a populist agenda, you throw in some paranoia, and next thing you know, you rule the masses.
There he is, Leigh George Kade.
There was a moment where she made the hearings like public essentially, and Picard was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And she was like, "It is so much better to make," and I agree with her. She said, "I think it's better to make this a public hearing because the longer we go on with secret hearings, paranoia and rumors are going to spread." And I actually respected that.
That's the one bit I agreed with, just the one bit. But the problem was that she had an agenda. She was going to find somebody. Like Lee was saying,
she outed that kid's heritage.
Yes,
like in front of his entire crew. I mean, you can pay lip service to transparency and still use that as a cudgel, and it's.
He's Colombian. Clearly, he doesn't like me. He's Colombian. Yeah, it's the whole thing, and I loved that Picard used her father's words against her. And allow me to quote.
Yes.
With the first link, the chain is forged, the first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Beautiful. Beautiful.
There was also a very brilliant costuming choice made with her character.
Yes.
She has this kind of dark burgundy gown on that she's wearing the entire time, and there is a little brooch that looks like a hangman's
It looked
noose.
like a noose.
Yes, and it was brilliant because it was just obvious enough, but also subtle enough that if you're not paying attention and you're like, oh, she's a hanging judge.
Exactly.
I'm glad you pointed that out, Lee, because I absolutely noticed that, and I just kind of thought, oh, that's going to go over everybody's heads, but not you guys. You guys are so smart. Some bits of trivia for this episode. According to director Jonathan Frakes, several shots were stolen from courtroom films, including Judgment at Nuremberg and the Kane
Steal
Mutiny.
from the best.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's as a director, right? Yeah. That's what you do. It's
that's Star Wars.
Yeah.
Let's steal from Kurosawa.
Exactly, and World War II or World War I fighter planes. Yeah.
Yep.
Michael Dorn has said that The Offspring and The Drumhead this episode were his 2 favorite episodes of The Next Generation.
Well, yeah, he and Picard had some good moments. So.
Yeah.
I will say, watching this episode, I didn't really care for it. I will say I also wasn't feeling great when I watched it, but also now talking about it with you gentlemen, find myself reflecting on it a bit more, and I'm going to turn around and say that I actually quite enjoyed it.
Well, and it's one of the I guess the tropey at this point, Starfleet courtroom episodes that, the first watch is kind of like, okay. And then, subsequent viewings or in discussing it like this, you discover how meaty they all are. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
you have a few more coming up in your viewing future to look forward to.
Yep.
Hoo, hoo,
Darmok.
hoo.
Coming up.
People keep talking about Darmok.
Oh, Darmok's gonna
Goodness.
break you like it broke us.
Oh, much.
Yeah.
Well,
Darmok's
All right.
amazing. But enough of that.
enough of that. Moving on. Half a Life. Counselor Troy's mother visits the Enterprise and becomes infatuated with a man whose culture forces him into a suicidal ritual called the Resolution. This episode begins with Deanna Troy narration, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm down with a Deanna episode.
Sure.
Please, hope to God it's a Deanna episode and that it's good. And then Loxana Troy walks around the corner, and I'm like, this is even better.
I love that every time they show Picard, he's waiting for her to jump out of something.
He looks around corners.
That was brilliant blocking.
Yeah.
Brilliant direction for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. So good. So the Enterprise has two special visitors, Counselor Deanna Troy's terribly flippant, meddling mother, Betazoid Ambassador Loaxana Troy. Also, in the previous episode, the Drumhead, one of Sati's cohorts, Sabin, was a Betazoid.
Yes.
We didn't even talk about that. And Picard was like, I don't know how I feel about you using a Betazoid. And she was like, you have a Betazoid counselor. What's the deal? Anyway.
Hypocrite.
Just a lot of hypocritical stuff being thrown around. So we have Loaxana, and then also top researcher Dr. Timison, who comes to try to help his home planet Kalon 2 revitalize its dying sun with helium emission and photon torpedoes. This is Federation's first contact with the rather reclusive race. The new technology is a test, and the system of revitalizing a sun has never been practically proven historically. Timison has spent 40 years of his life working on this technology. Extremely important note. The technology is the means to control the photon torpedoes to deliver the explosives in a particular sequence, blah, 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 start the sun. Timison is a quiet and dignified type. He has a daughter and a grandson, and although his wife died a few years ago, Loaxana is her usual loud self and clearly interested in Timison. Is it a man I've never met? I'm gonna try to bang him. Both guests prove that opposites attract, and they end up falling in love. I don't understand it. Seems to work for them. The experiment is a partial success, only promising scientific progress without immediate results. Timison is kind of distraught by the results, and when alone, he admits to Loaxana that he's on his way home to die. She escalates this matter to Picard, and Picard is like, I don't know what you want
Can't
me to
interfere.
do. I don't know what you want me to do, man. And alas, the minister in charge, Betardat, refuses to allow Timison to continue the experiment. Picard argues that it is progress that the core temperature reached the target for a few moments with scientific calibration. A more stable state might be achieved. This other guy is adamant, dictates that their law says he must commit ritual suicide called the Resolution when he turns 60 in a few days, being then considered a burden for the younger generations despite his excellent condition of mind and body. Loaxana and Timison have this argument that goes on for way too long. It's a good argument. I really enjoyed the dialogue of this scene, where Timison is like, I have to go back to my Midsommar planet and here's the reasons why. and honestly, I get it. I think his whole description of the Resolution and why his culture has adopted the Resolution is sound. I get it.
Especially at the time this was written.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we had just started doing massive institutionalization of the elderly, because the Greatest Generation was starting to age out and boomers didn't quite know what to do with their parents. So we saw this huge explosion of care homes and rest homes where previous generations actually usually kept their elderly at home. and let them die at home. So
Mm-hmm.
this was a pretty big issue at the time where people were trying to deal with that. Now we just keep them alive well past the time that they're supposed to die so we can get all the money out of them.
But this is also another hot topic issue of the time for Right to Die with Dr. Kevorkian.
Yes.
So
Yes,
this
also
was,
going
if I
on.
remember, that was one of the things that they, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, talked about as being a catalyst for this.
Yeah.
So Loaxana tries her best to convince Timothy that sure, you're planning your culture. This is a big deal. But what if you don't? Can you just not? And then she talks about how in her culture, they used to wear wigs and then they stopped wearing wigs. And I'm like, Loaxana, this is not the same type of issue.
little bigger. Little bigger.
Timothy explains that 15 to 20 generations ago, there was no resolution, and then the old people were left in old age homes to rot for many years. Hence, this system was put in place. Loaxana believes that old people should expect younger ones to care for them in their old age. Timothy, I think, rightfully says, absolutely not. Why would we burden our children with this? Loaxana cannot understand why the age is 60 years, and Timothy says that at this age, people are still in command of their mental faculties and can say goodbye to their loved ones in a coherent manner, and they are not yet invalids. She still argues that he is best suited to carry on the research as the planet has 30 to 40 years left at best. Meanwhile, Timothy works on the test data from the last explosion to figure out what to do next, and he realizes he needs more time to test his theory on a computer simulation. And
Theory
officially
that could save
asks-
his planet.
a theory that could save his planet,
Yeah.
and officially asks Picard for asylum aboard the Enterprise. And at that moment, the moment where he's doing the research, and you can see this realization creep across his face, I was like, well, aren't we in a pickle? Timothy tells Batardat that he can finish his work in less time and that the planet needs to revisit this practice of the resolution. But he sends warships to intercept the Enterprise. So, which leads me to a question. Hypothetically, I guess this is first contact with this planet. Hypothetically, you don't want to die at 60. Can you just leave? But then I'm under the impression that they track you down and say, no, you're 60. Come back home and so you can kill yourself.
It's a Logan's Run scenario.
I was going to say, have you ever seen Logan's Run?
So they send his daughter to try and convince him not to abandon the planet's traditions. And she gives a very heartfelt, emotional, and compelling speech about, how as part of their culture, you have raised me to not worship, but like you have raised me to believe that the resolution is something to aspire to. And like, this is so deeply ingrained in our culture. I cannot believe you would suddenly turn your back on that, because what am I supposed to do? And
her speech is so good that it's almost like the next season they write her in, that actress in, as a major role.
This is Michelle Forbes' first appearance in Star Trek in this episode.
Hush, that's future talk.
Sorry.
Oh, we're not going to tell you anything about her character, though.
Yeah,
She
the timeline is
also-
still stable.
She also admonishes Loaxana for poisoning her father's mind. Timothy ultimately decides to go back to his planet, says a tearful goodbye to Loaxana, and Loaxana decides to join him on the planet. Big crybaby. I'm like, yeah, Loaxana, you better go with him.
Yep.
I also had the thought, because there's a moment where Loaxana has a breakdown with Deanna and she starts crying. She's like, I never cry. Like, what is happening? She's kind of reckoning with her place, right? And who she is as she ages. And I had the thought, maybe I'm way off base here. I wonder if this instance was written for the women who were fans of the original series when they were younger, helped, drive the fan campaigns to keep the show alive. And now in Next Gen, they are probably around the same age as Loaxana, right? And probably experiencing the same kind of mental and emotional things that she's coming across. And so I kind of wonder if that was written for them and included for the old TOS fans who have been so fervently Star Trek fans.
I'm okay with that theory.
Yeah, it's just something I was tossing out there.
Yeah.
But
But
I
something
think
else with
the
this
oh, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
episode, no, something else with this episode is that we finally see. I mean, we've seen Loxana enough times to know that when she shows up, shit's going to happen, and Picard's going to be creeping through his own ship because he's scared of what's coming around the next corner. But
Mm.
we also see when she meets Timothy, after she latches onto him, we see something we never really see with her and Picard or anyone else. It's a very softer side of her, and
Yes.
and
An emotional depth.
empathetic side. Yeah,
Yeah.
in depth
Mhm.
to her that we have never
Yeah.
gotten before. And
They
the fact that they fight,
wrote her. Yeah, they wrote her much more rich in this.
Yeah.
Didn't
This leads into an interesting. This is my second favorite Loxana episode, next to the Next Gen episode that she shows up in, which will become very apparent to Rebecca when she sees it.
Next
why I
Gen
feel this
is-
way.
You mean
Next Gen is
DS9?
No,
DS9. DS9. Sorry.
Yeah.
But it's David Ogden Stiers that I think
the Martian Manhunter.
really pulls this show. Oh, jeez.
Brent,
Thank you for reminding me of that. He was only 40. He was only 49 years old when
Really?
this episode aired. Yeah, he was only like in his mid 30s in MASH.
Oh Jesus, really? I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
he just
oh my
seems
God.
so old, right? But
Always old. Yeah.
this guy, he's
Well-
just an amazing character actor, and he had his heart on his sleeve to the point where you could say, I can see why Loxana fell for this guy. He's so genuine.
Yeah, both of these actors working with each other, and they're just amazing. You see them
She
with some acting chops that you.
surprised me. Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I was totally shocked, and especially like the way you pointed out how, with Picard, she is chaotic energy, but Timothy really grounds her, and we see this very serious side of
I think
Loxana.
that's her. I think that ends up being the appeal for her
Mhm.
is that he grounds her and that he's just so genuine and sweet.
What's another thing about this episode, and it's what I love about good Star Trek, is it's a good prime directive discussion because in I know you're siding with Timothy on this, Rebecca, but for me, it's like Cap, Iron Man, and Civil War. They both are right. They both have points. I can't pick one side or the other. I get it.
I think I think both sides have excellent point. Both sides are right in their own ways. I think Loxana, they wrote her arguments in such a way that I had no choice but to diminish them. Because her reaction is extremely emotional, right? And Timothy's is very straightforward, like, hey, this is just facts. It is what it is. This is just the facts of my planet. Whereas she replies very emotionally, and like I said, even tries to compare the wig scenario to that.
But again, you've got like I said, take this in the context of this is very early in the Right to Die movement, where people like, I don't want to be here. Let me go. And their families had that emotional response that she had. So it is very much, it is a episode of its time, very much, but it's still, even now, very timely with,
Very
a
poignant.
lot of our parents coming of a certain age.
Yep. And
Yeah.
Also keep in mind, this is David Ogden Stiers' second best part. His first best part being Dr. Jumba Jakuba from Lilo and Stitch.
So
I thought you were going to say the clock on Beauty and the Beast, but anyway.
Oh yeah, he was great there too.
some trivia for this episode. This is the only episode where Deanna does an opening log entry. Kind of disappointing to learn.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, the number 4077 appears on an LCARS computer display. Guest David Ogden Stiers appeared in the TV series MASH as a surgeon at the 4077
4077.
Yeah, whatever. The Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. He was there. And this episode was likely inspired by the novel Pebble in the Sky by Isaac Asimov, which depicts a future Earth in which the inhabitants are also required to end their lives at the age of 60. Yeah, I kept calling this the Midsommar planet. So
Yeah.
that's
So
have you seen Logan's Run? Speaking of which,
I have not.
That's
I have
one
not.
for you.
That one, you die at 30.
Oh, well.
And you
sign
have
me
no
up.
choice.
Yeah.
You have
Okay.
no
Yeah.
choice.
Sign me up.
And it sounds like we won't be doing the MASH show anytime soon, right, Rebecca?
I mean, if you want to.
No,
We got a lot of Star Trek to get through. I do like Alan Alda. He's on that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Young,
Alan
handsome
Alda.
Alan Alda, yeah.
Pre Mephisto Waltz, Alan Alda.
Oh, thank you.
Speaking of handsome creatures, we're going to talk about the host. Dr. Crusher falls for someone who's not at all what she expects him to be. I am furious.
This episode.
I'm furious
pisses me
for
off
another
multiple
reason, but
reasons.
anyway.
Yeah.
So Dr. Crusher is secretly in love with Federation Ambassador Odan, who is hot. This man is unreasonably attractive for an alien. Like, he looks like he belongs on the cover of a Harlequin romance novel. Do you understand what I am saying?
Yes, I do.
He is on his way to the Alpha Moon, which is rebelling against the planet they were colonized from and causes potentially fatal environment damage, blah, blah, blah. Dr. Crusher ignores the facts that her humanoid lover's body has an alien symbiote in its entrails. It is common knowledge that the Trill are a unique species who live within a host body, and Crusher is unaware of it.
That's my problem with this episode.
Really? Oh, okay.
The Trill have been Federation
there.
members forever.
Yeah. Okay.
And she doesn't know?
I
Yeah,
thought
she
it would be
doesn't-
something else. That's
And
interesting.
She was the
didn't
head of
know that
Starfleet Medical.
She's the head of Starfleet Medical, and she had no idea that the Trill. I mean, not all of them. You have to be very special to be a host, but
Yes.
it's not like that wasn't by later episodes where the Trill are involved. It's common fucking knowledge, right? And so, but Beverly Crusher MD is like, that's news to me.
Yeah, so I don't even...
Maybe the Trill joined during the off season.
The
Yeah.
whole...
During her season at Starfleet.
Well, and he's
There you go.
also, this isn't the Trill makeup that we end up seeing later.
Also,
No.
Yeah.
The actual plot of this episode, I don't even want to talk about because
Yeah.
I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
So essentially, the parasite is draining the body that it's in, as it tends to do. And
That's
Rutrow.
my problem.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That is a continuity thing.
And while on a shuttle trip, the shuttle is being attacked. There's danger. Riker's there. Odan is there, and they're like, we cannot bring her in. Like, you got to beam us aboard. And Odan is like, oh my god, please do not. You will kill me. And Riker's like, okay.
Continuity error.
because question I must pose on Twitter that nobody has answered. Parasite living in Odan, right? Using the transporter would kill him. Can pregnant women use the transporter?
Yes. Gates
Okay.
McFadden was 7 months pregnant in this episode. Obviously, she moved up and down several times.
But is there evidence in Star Trek overall of a pregnant woman using the transporter?
This is also the only time this is an issue for Trill.
Yeah.
Yes.
This will be the only time that it's
The
an issue.
only- Okay, wait a minute.
Okay, but
I think the
then how
best
did
way
he
to
get
describe
on
this.
Okay, go on.
Hang on a sec. The same way that McCoy always got everywhere. Shuttle.
Yeah.
But
That's fair.
this is one of those things where they just introduced the Trill in this episode, and much like the Ferengi 3 years before, they hadn't
Yeah.
fleshed out the details of
Yeah.
them.
Exactly.
So
This
now
this
it's
was
like,
a seed that germinated into something glorious,
yes.
but
Actually,
a
a couple
shitty
of
seed.
things kind of glorious.
So he has some boo-boos from the shuttle attack, and he gotta find a new host. So they ask the Trill, hey, can you send us a new host? And they're like, yeah, we'll get there in 40 hours. This man does not have 40 hours. So up steps our man Riker, who's down for anything.
He'll do anything.
He'll let anything be put inside him.
Yeah, go ahead.
So he offers to become the host, and Beverly is like, "Oh no.
She knows she's just going to have to bang Riker right after this.
I guess I'm gonna have to bang Riker." So Odan
Already
takes
am.
over Riker's body. Riker as Odan hits on Beverly, and Beverly, oh no. And Beverly goes to talk to her friend Deanna about it. Oh my gosh. And earlier, I didn't even mention that the Enterprise has a salon.
Yes.
And
Of course
It's got
they
a sky
do.
mall too, but nobody talks about it.
because I don't know, maybe I just hate women, but I did not like the scene of them in the salon. I did not enjoy watching Beverly getting her nails did and Deanna coming in looking to talk some hot goss, because Deanna looks over at Beverly and she's like, "You've been getting laid?" And Beverly's like, "What are you talking about?" And Deanna says, "You have been glowing," but she says it in the bitchiest way possible. I'm like, okay, is that a compliment? It doesn't sound
Look at what's
like
been happening
one.
in Deanna's love life, though. Not much.
Yeah, she's jealous. Oh.
She wants some parasite action.
So Beverly goes to Deanna and is like, "Oh, look, Riker, I see him as a brother. What am I supposed to do?
May I have permission?
May I
This
please bang your
relationship."
boyfriend?" And Deanna, ever the professional, is like, "Okay."
This relationship. God. Ah.
Deanna does, however, drop some crazy insightful words of wisdom here, though, about how Beverly should accept the love. It's not in the form that you want, but it's love, and you should accept it. And I was like, damn,
Can't be
that's
with
some.
the one you love the one you're with.
Mm.
Love is not in the form. Remember that when we come to the end.
So Beverly goes for it. And I disliked every single second of it.
Me too.
Blah blah blah, new host arrives and it's a woman. And so Beverly and Odan have the conversation of like, hey, and Beverly's like, no, hard no.
She was so cold about it.
Hard no. And the
So
thing
she'll
about
bang
this
her
episode,
brother, but she won't bang a chick.
Thank you.
the thing about this episode, maybe I'm way off base. I viewed this as a trans allegory.
Oh, there's one coming.
Sure. I viewed this episode as a trans allegory, which, so you can imagine my whiplash when a woman appears to be the new host and Beverly shuts down.
I honestly think, now look at the time here, because there is actually a scene in another Star Trek that actually features the first same-sex kiss on television. And this episode, I think they were so terrified because they had just started doing well in the ratings of losing the South. Because that's always the thing they talk about with things that they were trying to push, trying so desperately to push, that like Macha Hernandez, they dropped the whole Tasha Yar being a gay character bit because they were going to lose the South. And so
that's why I say
that's what
fuck
happened
the
here.
South.
Right.
Honestly, they're not allowed.
But Carrie,
to
my
have
parents live there.
I don't think the South is allowed to have Star Trek.
They
We
gave
smuggled
us.
it in. We smuggled it in quietly.
I was going to say, they gave us, the South has given us so much music and food and all of this, but you can't have Star Trek, the South. I'm sorry.
Unless
So
it
there's
is
another thing
saving
about this.
saving a poor kid down there who is smart and
There
is
there
trying
are
to
some
escape.
there are some people from really repressed areas that Star Trek is motivated and inspired. So
Yeah, that's true.
So one thing with this about keeping the host and the symbiont alive that I'm kind of like, you have shown in story that you can do this. When they brought the accelerated genetics kids on board, or that one kid on board,
Yes.
in a stasis bubble. So we put him in a coma and locked him in time. And
or throw them in the transporter buffer.
well,
They
they
do it
haven't
all the
really,
time.
they haven't really done that yet, though. I don't think.
Oh,
they've
you
do
said
that until.
Well, they brought Pulaski back through the transporter buffer with a piece of
And
hair.
technically, the transporter buffer was established in, well, I guess, Strange New Worlds, but
Well, no, but I mean
many
relics.
years
I
later.
mean, we haven't gotten to
Yeah.
relics yet, so that's where we really see this one.
Yeah.
Well, the trivia for this episode, Leah already dropped it. Gates McFadden was 7 months pregnant during this episode, which must have been extra weird. But whatever. I just
Riker.
I just want them to figure out what to do with women in this show.
Keep waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
get
the
there.
next episode, I also don't even want to talk about. The Mind's Eye. Geordi is brainwashed by Romulans to start a war between the Klingons and the Federation.
I call this episode the Manjordian candidate.
All right. That's it for us. Just kidding.
Fired. Fired.
Good night, everyone.
George, during the host, I was like, hey, it has been a minute since we've had a Riker episode. I'm gonna need a Riker episode soon.
Geordi.
So imagine my disappointment when we get another Geordi episode. The man can narrate, though. Can we all admit that? The man
Sure.
can
He
narrate.
spent all that time on Reading Rainbow.
I know.
Yeah.
150 points to Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Geordi is on his way to Risa until an unexpected Romulan war vessel beams him aboard to brainwashed. Hey, this episode was a really good Captain Marvel movie. I will say that.
Sure.
So
I just have one question about that. He's going to Rise for a cybernetics conference.
for a
Who the hell planned
conference.
this? Yeah, who planned this?
Think about it.
Conference?
All the big tech conferences are in Las Vegas, though.
You gotta
Oh.
wonder because
Yeah,
all
but
these
you're right.
engineering nerds, like Geordi, they must all be super awkward. So I wonder
Yeah.
if they're like, if we go to Risa, people will have to have sex with us. The logic is flawless.
Look at my statue.
Look at my statue.
It says I'm horny.
So essentially the Romulans, they kidnap Geordi and they're like, we're gonna brainwash him, and so he's gonna be an assassin. And so they pop him back on the Enterprise and everything seems fine, but Data is like, something seems weird with your eye thing. But then also the Klingons are there, and it actually turns out that Geordi is there to assassinate Governor Vach. Remember Vach?
Mm-hmm.
And Picard stops him in time. Like, literally, that's all I want to say about this episode. I wish I cared more, but I don't.
Next
I-
episode.
Well,
Geordi is just such a damsel in distress all the damn time, and I'm tired of it.
and once
so,
again,
so was LeVar.
yes, and once again, we have another major security problem on board the Enterprise, in the form of Geordi LaForge and his visor. It can
Get
be
him
hacked.
out of there!
Get out of here! You're not allowed on a Federation starship anymore.
Why
I'm
is
sorry.
the warp drive always breaking, Geordi?
If I'm, Starfleet, if I'm Section 31, you're out of there. Anyway.
There. And also, there is a moment in this episode where Deanna rushes up to Geordi. Tell me all about Risa. And Geordi's like, I went to the conference and I did conferencey stuff. And she's like, and
Wants to know why Riker keeps going.
No, and he kind of hints that maybe something happened, and that's obviously been programmed in his brain from the Romulans. Maybe a little something happened. Maybe I'll tell you about it someday.
Oh,
he
I ran
walks
into
into
Dr. Leah Brahms.
he walks into the turbo lift, and Deanna is visually pissed that she didn't get any tea. She's visually pissed. What kind of a counselor is this?
she's the exact reason why I want to be a therapist, because I'm nosy as hell and I want to know
Well,
everyone's stuff.
You know, this episode came out when the DSM-3 was in effect, so I think that it's a psychology joke.
Nice deep cut.
Yeah.
So, as Carrie's 150 points acknowledged earlier, this episode was based upon the classic film The Manchurian Candidate. And this is the first time that Majel Barrett received credit for voicing the Enterprise D's computer.
Really? It's taken all this time?
Taken all this time.
For fuck's sake. Yeah.
Well, Carrie, as we know, Star Trek doesn't know what to do with women. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all right.
It'll figure it out.
Speaking of, we're going to move right on along to In Theory. When a female crew member is infatuated with Lieutenant Commander Data, he decides to give a romantic relationship a try. Also, the Enterprise finds itself having to maneuver through a dangerous nebula. Blah, 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 blah.
Whatever. Nebula.
So in other words, we had 30 minutes of story. I needed another 12 minutes of B-plot.
Yeah, exactly.
The B plot, I couldn't tell you anything about it. Just gonna
Great.
ignore it.
Good death, though. That lady that got phased into the floor, that was some
That
creepy shit.
That
Dios
was cool.
mio,
Yeah,
that was
that was
spooky.
cool.
Yeah. But the lady that wanted to go to Clown Town with Data, annoying. Everything about her was annoying.
A little bit.
Jenna.
A little
Yeah.
bit.
So,
Oh,
Christ on a crutch.
and
Honestly,
it's not the actress's fault. It's everything Rebecca's been
No.
saying. They just don't know how to write women in Next Gen.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that so far it seems every woman they have written is messy. And I love watching messy women do messy things. So Jenna has been hanging out with Data. And so she broke up with her boyfriend and she started kind of flirting with this new guy. And Data was like, do you want me to tell you my thoughts? I'm going to tell you my thoughts anyway. And she was like, okay, fine, whatever. And Data starts giving her music lessons and they just keep hanging out. And from there, Jenna is like, oh, maybe this man can be my new boyfriend. Because it seems like Jenna is just always on the hunt for love.
Yeah.
Geordie in reverse.
Geordie
Yes.
in reverse. Thank you. And Data is totally oblivious to this, of
Geordie in
course.
reverse.
This episode is like watching me date
Oh, yeah.
back in the 90s. What do you mean she's
Data-
interested in me?
Data makes Jenna laugh with his stoic responses. He insults her living quarters. And one
Everything a
day
girl
is
likes.
Data is startled when Jenna kisses him. I was screaming at my TV. I hated every second of this. I do have a question. So I know we're making shirts for the Enterprise Drama Club. I'm starting to wonder if we should make shirts for the Enterprise Band because we
Yes.
get a fun.
No. You know why? Because Miles O'Brien, incredible cello player that he is never allowed to play again.
Listen. Trust me. I went to Twitter with this. In this is a strictly like woodwinds performance. So
No, there was a French horn.
okay. The woodwinds.
Why do you have a French
woodwinds
horn
and
with
some
four
brass.
woodwinds?
Woodwinds and brass because the flute was also there. And Keiko playing the clarinet, or is it the oboe? Either one. Keiko's up there playing a woodwind, and Chief O'Brien comes over. He's like, "Oh, you did great." Am I to believe he had to put aside his cello career, and
Yep.
Keiko just gets to go
Supportive
on
husband.
with
She
her
doesn't.
wood?
We
They
already
cannot.
we
do
already
both?
know she doesn't like his food. She doesn't like.
She doesn't like his food.
his
She
friends.
doesn't like his
his
music.
socks. She doesn't like his socks, and she doesn't like his cello.
She
So-
doesn't like picking up after him.
Yeah.
Well, but let's not forget what Eddie Vedder said on stage the other night is that there's nothing more masculine than supporting a strong, independent woman.
I guess.
True.
Sorry,
Guess.
it's just
But
Eddie
couldn't
Vedder.
they?
Okay.
Couldn't they have just let Miles and his cello come up there?
Eddie
And he
Vedder, when I was a child, I was at home with my mother. I was probably like 3 or 4 watching the MTV Music Video Awards. And Pearl Jam walks across the stage. I point and I go, Daddy. And my mom told my dad that, and he didn't appreciate that.
I would think he'd change his mind now. I think he feels differently.
So Data goes around talking to the whole ship basically about what should I do.
That was also, I mean, he had no frame of reference. He didn't know that was wrong. But again, a wonderful. It was great because you got insights into all the characters. And my advice was Picard's advice, which was, and no.
I love that Riker's whole thing is, well, and then when you get to Clown Town, let me tell you what happens.
Well, and then Data's like, I already know. But I do like that Guinan shows up, and I was like, yes, please slap some sense into this android because I cannot tolerate any of this. But Guinan, she always just drops the perfect bit of advice, and she says, hey, if this is your first love affair, I literally cannot intervene. You kind of just have to learn how to do this on your
It's
own.
the prime directive of love.
If I was naming the episodes, that would be the name of this episode.
Prime directive of love. Prime directive.
He talks to Deanna, and Deanna says, don't trust books, essentially. Whenever the literature tells you, don't trust it. Geordi says that Jenna's on a rebound, and this may not be the best time to approach her.
Yes, that's right.
And
Game
But come on,
recognizes
but
game.
Game recognizes game, but I mean, let's face it. Geordie is not the best player of said game. The
That's
fact that
true.
he's dropping this is just kind of like hot kettle.
Yeah.
And Worf warns Data that Jenna is under his command. Worf dropping the HR handbook on his feet. Riker
The
says,
HR handbook, according to Worf, is you mess with her, I'll kill you.
I do. I would love to have Worf as like a big brother figure. I think
Yeah.
that would be the best. And of course, Riker says,
Do
"Why don't you try running
it.
a romantic program?"
Oh no, that gets you into trouble, son.
And then Data tries running a romantic program, and I want to vomit. Listen. I love when Brent Spiner gets to do stuff as Data. I hated every second of this.
Yeah,
It was kind of repugnant.
This was a bothersome episode. Yes.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, and
I
then
put this right up with Geordi meeting Leah Brahms.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then I was kind of expecting the episode to go in an entirely different direction because somebody has broken into Data's quarters and the cat is loose. I was like, oh my God, is this woman now stalking him? And she let his cat out. The biggest offense, in my opinion. And no, it's a ghost or
It's
something.
ghosts.
It's poltergeist.
It's the nebula or whatever.
Ghost.
Yes.
It is a space ghost. I don't.
And then you get my all-time favorite thing, which is Patrick Stewart read the script and said, "I'm barely in this. Please let me fly the shuttle and save the day."
Literally. Well, this is Patrick Stewart's directorial debut.
Oh, is it?
Love that for
okay.
him.
All right.
Okay. Yeah,
And then Jenna breaks up with Data.
Womp womp.
It's we knew it wasn't going to work.
And we get the only good scene in the entire episode, which is the cat jumping up on his lap to console him after his breakup.
Yay!
Like a
Which is
good kitty does.
Exactly. That's their jobs, man.
Meow. Like I said, this is the first episode to be directed by Patrick Stewart. Good for him. In an interview in 2014, Patrick Stewart chose this episode as his favorite episode of TNG. Bias. I'm just going to say bias. Because
Well,
you
I directed and I saved the day.
My favorite Harry Potter fan film was the one I directed too. Like, after the observation room's brief exposure to space, Data makes note of the changes in the transparent aluminum of the windows, a reference to the same material that Montgomery Scott introduced as a bargaining chip in Star Trek IV. And in one scene, the Picard jokes that the Enterprise must have a poltergeist, and in a subsequent scene, chairs on the bridge observation deck are piled on the table, like in that movie Poltergeist. And that was I had the Leonardo DiCaprio meme of like, oh, I get it, like that, like the Poltergeist. Yeah, I was just so mad. I was just so mad at this episode.
Yeah. The only bit of trivia I have is that the woman who the actress's name, Jenna Michelle Scarabelli, has continually worked, and just recently was in Superman and Lois, Martha Kent.
Nice.
Yes.
In flashback
Oh.
episodes. She was also in the final episode of Riverdale as old Betty Cooper.
Hilarious.
Okay,
So
other trivia bits. So she was
Hilarious.
other Star Trek Superman and Lois tie-in. Gates McFadden was Martha Kent in the pilot. She for like 30 seconds and then dies.
really? Oh, I did not know that.
Yes.
All
And
right.
it was an uncredited thing.
Interesting.
There you go.
Well,
Oh yes, Lee, go on.
stinkers pretty much through all of this.
Stinkers, stinky,
but-
stinky, stinky.
But
I don't know,
Ronald
Half-Life,
Moore,
Come on.
Ronald Moore will be back next week to save us
Next
from all
week.
this mediocrity.
Ooh, yes, baby. Next week is a very special episode. I'm calling it episode 46.5, where we are going to be talking about the season finale, Redemption Part 1, and then also the season 5 premiere, Redemption Part 2. So that's where we will be next week. Any final thoughts from the group before we wrap it up today?
I think I've laid it all out on the table.
I'll just say the trill get better.
The
Trill
trill
get
do get
better.
that. Yes, he's right.
I think this season and most seasons of Next Gen are proof that a 10-episode, not network television show is the best way to go.
Could be.
Because
Yeah.
if they had taken the 10 or 12 or 15 solid episodes they had this season and just done those, no crumbs left, right?
Exactly.
Different era. Different
Oh,
era.
yeah.
Don't
For sure.
worry, we're reinventing cable, so maybe it'll make a return.
It's on its way back, baby.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait to write that check.
Yep.
Well, but until then, we will keep going where no man has gone before, but a lot of people have gone before. Thank you once again, everyone. I love you very much. Bye-bye.